Well, greetings everyone and welcome to the Argonaut monthly video covering January 2025. Now, the two main stock market events of the month were the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th US president and his executive orders, and also the Chinese company DeepSeek that announced that using open source code, it had significantly reduced the costs of artificial intelligence without a commensurate loss of performance. Now, you can read our thoughts on both of these events in our monthly commentary. Now, in this month's video, we're going to concentrate on developments in Argentina, where last year our stock market investments performed very strongly. And we visited Argentina during the month to assess the political and economic climate 1 year on from President Milei taking office. And here are some of our thoughts. Now, this is a 1,000 peso note. It's got a picture of the Janero, the Argentinian national bird, on it. But today it's worth about 77p. In 2001, it was worth about £800. In other words, against the pound, which has not been a particularly good store of value, the Argentinian currency has lost 99% in the last 23 years. Now, the biggest denomination note in Argentina is 20,000 pesos, around £15, and Argentina has now stopped minting coins. And because there's a big black market economy, often people won't accept cards, so it's often necessary to carry a fair wedge of cash around. But distrust of money caused by the corruption of the state is at the heart of Argentina's political and economic problems. Now, it would seem impossible to assess Milei's Argentina without understanding the problems, without understanding what has gone before. 70 years of corrupt Peronist state socialism, interspersed with two reactionary military juntas in 1966 to 73 and 76 to 83, and more recently, the failure of Argentina's only non-Peronist democratically elected president, Mauricio Macri, between 2015 and 2019. Before the Peronists, Argentina's standards of living, GDP per capita, was 80% of the US level. It's now just 16%. And the Peronist legacy has seen the following: high levels of welfare and taxation, which have undermined Argentina's work ethic and led to an unofficial black economy, which some estimate to be as big as a third of the official economy. High levels of protectionist tariffs, which have undermined Argentina's economic competitiveness and also meant that imports are very expensive. Multiple defaults on external government debt that has led to Argentina's inability to access foreign investment and capital markets. Central bank money printing, financing fiscal deficits that has since 2002 manifested in an annual inflation rate on average of 38% and a cumulative currency depreciation of 99%. And finally, insane levels of Peronist corruption that has finally led to the electorate declaring no mas and, in its despair, electing President Milei El Loco. Now, everybody in Argentina, it seems, has a nickname, nearly always derogatory and often based on their looks. Nestor Kirchner, elected president in 2003, was known as the Penguin. He was succeeded by his wife, Cristina, who is still the leader of the Peronist movement and has a number of nicknames that loosely translate into English as a female dog. There followed the reformer Mauricio Macri, who was known as the Cat, and after suffering a loss of political nerve, a more derogatory feline term. He lost to Alberto Fernandez, who was known, amongst many things, as the wife beater, owing to accusations made by his partner. Now, after all of this, you can see how ending up with Javier Milei, the madman, is in historical context not necessarily so strange or unflattering. In his first 12 months, President Milei took his chainsaw to public spending, cutting it by one-third in real terms and establishing Argentina's first fiscal surplus in 16 years. Inflation has been reduced from 25% per month to just 2.5% per month, during which time the economy remarkably contracted by just 2% in real terms. So a lot better than what the doom mongers estimated. But the economy is now growing again. The last official figures we have were for Q3 last year, which saw the economy grow by 3.9% quarter on quarter and unemployment fall to 6.9% from 7.6%. And Argentina, importantly, is expected to see economic growth of at least 5% per annum for the next 2 years. Now, importantly, given the crucial need to maintain Milei in power, Milei's popularity is increasing after 12 months, with 54% approving and only 44% disapproving, and this compares to 50% approving and 48% disapproving when he was elected 13 months ago. Now, if there is to be a sustainable economic miracle in Argentina, ending the cancer of Peronism, it will, in my opinion, be based on two factors. Number one, President Milei winning 2 terms as president and also a parliamentary majority, which he currently lacks, and the continued development and successful monetization of the Vaca Muerta shale oil and gas deposit in the state of Neuquén, which, according to the US EIA, contains 16.2 barrels of recoverable oil and 308 trillion cubic feet of recoverable natural gas. Now, that would make it the second biggest shale gas deposit in the world and the fourth biggest shale oil reserve. Now, today, Argentina produces 750,000 barrels of oil per day, of which Vaca Muerta is currently 2/3, and is exporting 250,000 barrels. In other words, domestic demand is 500,000, which has turned the country from a net importer to an exporter of energy and has created a trade surplus, bringing in much needed US dollars to the country's central bank. Now, the quality of the rock in Vaca Muerta compares to the Permian, considered the best in North America, but it's at a much earlier stage of development, meaning that on average it is currently a lot more productive. And this is what is really exciting the geologists. And as new pipeline infrastructure is developed, and pipeline is currently the bottleneck to growth, the first of which will come on stream in March this year, linking Vaca Muerta to the Atlantic ports, Argentinian oil production should increase to 1.75 million barrels a day by 2028, meaning that Argentina would export 1.5 million barrels a day, which would rank it equivalent to Iran in the current global oil market. And that would bring in $30 billion at $60 oil to the currency, resolving overnight its dollar solvency and currency convertibility issues. Now, it's often said that Argentina's currency is now too strong, and it's certainly a lot stronger than its major trading partner in Brazil. But currency rates are not only an expectation of today's economy, but also tomorrow's. And it's worth pointing out that Argentina also generates a trade surplus on this apparently strong currency last year of $18 billion. And this trade surplus is used to pay down government debt. So ironically, as Argentina exports more oil, its problem might be too strong rather than too weak a currency. Now, this can be offset through a reduction of import taxes and perhaps a sovereign wealth fund. And certainly the reduction of import taxes would also have the benefit of reducing inflation. Now, there are not many countries which are currently becoming more rather than less hospitable to international capital, and the Argentinian government is currently unique amongst sovereigns in paying down its debt through a fiscal and a trade surplus. Now, traveling in the right direction from a low base, we believe that Argentina merits inclusion in our global opportunity set. Now, the private sector, in contrast to the problems that the government has had with its debt, the private sector in Argentina has very little debt. For example, Galicia Bank, which has 3 million customers, has only 2,000 customers that have mortgages. And previously, bank customer deposits were used by banks not to lend, but to essentially buy government bonds, financing a corrupt government. Now, as inflation and interest rates fall, this should lead to the private sector taking on debt from very low levels, which are currently private sector debt as a proportion of GDP is just 11%. And opportunities for banks which are deposit rich with very clean balance sheets with no defaulting customers to lend with this leverage having a very positive multiplier effect for economic growth. So, for example, most banks are expecting about 50% loan growth this year. Now, our favored play is Galicia, which is, if you like, the blue chip bank in Argentina. And this will also have benefit from synergies from the recent acquisition of HSBC's Argentinian assets. But the real excitement in Argentina is in energy and Vaca Muerta. And along with offshore Guyana, Vaca Muerta is currently probably the world's most compelling global energy opportunity. We're playing this through YPF and Vista, with both companies having the ability to significantly ramp up production. So, for example, YPF will increase production by 250% to 2028 and maybe by 5 times over the few years beyond that. And also, they're increasing production at much lower cost of production. So, for example, YPF's lifting costs in Vaca Muerta are just $5, and that compares to $25 in its conventional assets. So much higher production at much lower cost. That's about as good as you can get in a commodity company and a commodity investment. Now, the fund's Argentinian investments were already significant contributors to performance in 2024. And we've had to cut them back because cognizant of historic volatility and portfolio risk, so that they've been cut back to their more modest original sizes. So we're still very enthusiastic about Argentina and Vaca Muerta in particular, but it's worth pointing out that Argentina is one of many ways that profits can manifest for the fund in 2025.